Namaste, world raisers. So as you can see, I'm at a different location. I am at the Kashi Vishwanath Temple at the BHU University. So today was my pilgrimage to check out the campus grounds and of course the temple. And now I finished with the tour, so now I just came back to do my talks from here. And it was pretty impressive. It's this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful campus. The architecture is ancient, and of course the temple is absolutely amazing. And the one thing I love about it the most is that different inscriptions from various dharmic spiritual traditions, not just Hinduism, because of course we know that it's all interconnected, right? So you got depictions of the Buddha, you got quotes from the Ramayana, you got quotes from the Vedas, the Upanishads. So it's an absolutely incredible place to be. So when we're talking about Hinduism, we got to keep in mind that it's broad, right? It encompasses basically everything, the whole world, all the world religions. And if the Adharmic, like the Abrahamic religions, would kind of evolve, only slightly to understand that the true meaning and representation of God is like all encompassing, right? So there's one ultimate infinite source of absolutely everything in existence. And that's what Hinduism gets so accurate, right? And it seems like some other belief systems are fractured there and they're stuck and they hit a wall thinking that their way is the only way. But at the same time, within Hinduism, just over subjugation and invasions over so many thousands of years, they've really lost the spiritual essence. Yeah, because I got a very amazing comment the other day talking about exactly that, how everything got decimated and then divided, and then the caste system was imposed upon them when it was never supposed to be that. It was always a Varna system where you could choose what you're drawn to. So then a lot of corruption over time creeped in. And then the cleanliness, fell away over time, because when people are subjugated and shoved into poverty, tragic things arise from that. The mindset shifts downwards, and the consciousness, the level of the collective field, it goes down into a state of suffering and lack, because everybody has to really strive for themselves. So the wealth of the nation, isn't flowing as it should, right? So hopefully, and I see it happening, it's on the rise now, right? So with the access of the internet and all the spiritual teachings, I really see it in the younger generation, right? So I came here for Darshan this morning at a little after 4 a.m, and then there was a bunch of young people inside the inner sanctum, and then of course I made friends with a couple of them. One of them ohmed with me. We bonded, and he took me for a tour of the campus. So Surab, yeah, thank you. And he's really devotional. He's doing the Damaru. He comes to the temple every morning to make sure that he gets up, and he's really focused and passionate on God first, and then, of course, his dream on purpose and mission. So, yeah, amazing story, amazing individual, and I see that in the younger generation. So it's coming back, but we got to keep in mind, ultimately, when you're focused on God and Dharma and duty and purpose, to really keep it in mind, because that's the most important thing within Hinduism, is the feeling that, we are all one family. So of course within the family there's going to be certain family members that aren't as spiritually evolved as the others, but at the same time, that's when behavior comes in. So we really got to analyze our behavior and contemplate if it's for the good or the bad of society. Because that's the big thing. In this world, there's so many atrocities and crazy things happening right now, low vibration, right? So with the advents of like quantum physics and science, now people are really getting on board with that, and we're calling this the quantum field, right? Or the matrix, or the simulation, like we're inside a simulation. And that's a pretty cool concept when you think about it, because if we are in a simulation, like it's no different than what's been coming out of Hinduism for thousands of years in the ancient scriptures, that we're actually within the mind of infinite field of consciousness. We're inside the mind of God, and we're all part of that field, and we're all manifestations of the one infinite source. So very similar, but it seems like if we're just going to tie into the computer simulation model, then the purpose could be individuated as like everybody for themselves, right? When you hear some people screaming and ranting about getting out of the matrix, a lot of times they're just talking about getting wealthy, everyone for themselves, get wealthy, and then you can get out of poverty and suffering and then take care of yourself and your immediate family. But ultimately, that's not the ultimate goal of this game. If we're talking about a game or a divine play, yeah, the scriptures are talking about we got to get back to oneness, right? So that the wealth and abundance that we do, acquire, it flows through us. It flows through us effortlessly, and that's really the practice of karma. And in other traditions, you can call it what it is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So we're progressing spiritually by analyzing our behavior and seeing where we need to improve. And when there's lack, when there's fear and doubt and these negative emotions coming up, or anger or hate, then we do the work and we go within. Because if we're all manifestations of the one infinite source, then you're talking about, non-duality. So we're all one in reality, and we need to treat each other accordingly. So love, right? So duty, so cleanliness. Yeah, and this is what was lost due to the past. India was pure back in ancient times. It was all about cleanliness. You go down to the river, you take your holy baths, once or twice a day, morning and evening. Very cleanliness of body, speech, and mind. But now it's deteriorated over time that, we know the situation, right? So there is a lower mindset where people are thinking it's the duty of others to clean up after them and look after the place. Yeah, and that is happening, for the most part, but at the same time, there's still a lot of garbage and litter everywhere that we know about. So what I'm saying is that as the mindset shifts, which needs to happen, and the collective consciousness within the Hindus of India elevates, then that raises the collective field, and that creates the potentiality for more and more Hindus to evolve. So it's really, really important for the higher spiritually evolved Hindus to maintain that vibration, that lovingness, that kindness, monitoring their behavior, and maintaining that cleanliness of body, speech, and mind. Yeah, it's so important, because we can go to the temple and pray and worship and make offerings all we want, but until we're transforming within, then there's nothing really happening. So you get the blessings to transform, but then you still have to put forth the effort, right? And then be that example, because that's what inspires others, to do the same. So great potentiality, and that's why I'm all on board, and I'm 100%, focused on the Hindus, because we have the highest spiritual teachings within there, because it's not a religion. It's not based on dogma. It's not based on just one book. It's based on direct realization of absolute truth. So we're talking about mysticism. So that's the most important thing about it. Not a religion. The teachings are coming from mystics, right? Which you can also say that Jesus, who attained a very high level of consciousness, and then he taught from that point of view, was also a mystic. But the problem is, within institutions, they grasp onto one idea as being the only way. So Hinduisms and Hindus need to stand fast, because there is, adharmic forces out there. And another thing I foresee is that, amongst the youth, we got to be on par, because the youth within, the other religions, they're also coming to realize truth as well. But if they're coming at it from within their faith, they're going to grasp onto that as, of course, being what's indoctrinated, that it's the only way. And then, of course, conflict is going to come about of that. So as, Hindus spread to greater and greater parts of the world, they need to come up and evolve with the times, so then there's a more acceptance there, right? So just speaking on that is, Yeah, I've heard it from quite a few people that are, getting irritated, and it's all over the internet. You can look up videos on racism, you know, getting more prevalent towards Indians, because Indians are all over the world now, and then there's still this mindset and behavior where they're not really adopting into the culture that they're going into. For example, going for a picnic at the park and leaving all their garbage strewn about. Yeah, so it's not appropriate, and we can admit that, and then at the same time we can hold in mind that that is overcome, because the Indians are getting all lumped into the same pool where people aren't, hating on Hindus per se, they're hating on Indians. So all of a sudden there's no distinction amongst the Westerners, between the Muslim Hindus and the Christian Hindus and or Indians, and then the Hindu Indians, right? So we got to maintain that the Hindus, technically, they do have the higher spiritual truth. So that needs to be preserved, and it needs to be, practiced in the sense of one family. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's why it was very difficult for me to see, and even talking to people, that, no one's talking about it. They're saying that it's Indians, that, yeah, Indians are lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, and there's people making videos online about these things happening to them. Yeah, there's one famous comedian right now, female, who's spouting off about all of her anti-India, rhetoric. But she backs it up with really good examples of getting scammed at hotels in various places, and she's just labeling them as Indians. But, in reality, they're not just Indians, they're also Hindus. So the Hindus do need to evolve, and now's the time, right? So all religions need to evolve ultimately, so that we can see that we're all one and there's many paths and many traditions. But if the Hindus aren't acting accordingly, like one family, then the dark times are just going to get darker, right? And then all of a sudden there's going to be conflicts, right? Hindus versus Muslims, which is already happening, so which is another reason why Hindus need to stand up and really dive into the teachings and maintain their stance that, yes, we're one family, but you can't be treating us that way. That's the real spiritual warfare, the battle of good versus evil, dharmic versus adharmic. So when we're talking about dharma, that's the duty. Like, what's your duty? So yeah, it's important to think about. So talking about the dharmic traditions, and then surrendering onto a deity and your faith, you got to promote that, and then you got to question identity, right? So in reality, our identity, when we go to the innermost soul, it's one with God, it's one with the divine, it's one with the infinite field of consciousness. We're pure awareness at the center of our Atman and our soul. And then anything that manifests within the mind is an appearance to that consciousness. So identity is very, very important. So keeping in mind the ultimate identity of one's soul, and then trickling down into career, profession, nationality, religion, and then the other ones like father, mother, son, brother, on and on and on. Like, what is your identity? So we got to distinguish. What's the higher identity? Is it Indian or is it Hindu? And I believe that it needs to be established that it's Hindu, but a practicing, higher Hindu that understands the highest teachings of non-duality in particular. Because when you understand non-duality, which is in most of the scriptures, even in various forms, and whether you believe in the duality and that God is transcendent but not immanent, or however you want to visualize that, it doesn't matter, because when we're talking about God being all-powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, transcendent, and immanent, God is basically everything, the manifestation of the whole universe. So whether there's a source outside of the universe, that is, it's also in the scriptures, that's dualistic and separate from the creation in itself, within the mind of God, is still non-dual in nature. We're still part of the ultimate mind. And this is proven scientifically now, yeah, quantum physics, nonlinear dynamics, and all of the science is pointing to that truth, to the point where you have really, really smart geniuses talking about we're in a simulation, we're in a matrix. So we got to analyze that and be like, oh, so what does that mean? So we're manifestations of consciousness, right? And we're manifestations from one source, which means that the only thing that ultimately matters in this existence, when we're talking about, yeah, the limitless nature, and that it's immutable, right? Like our souls are eternal, right? So within the Bhagavad Gita and the ancient scriptures, we know this. So we got to focus on the behavior. So karma, all of the yogas to transcend and evolve our understanding in our souls to the point that we can attain moksha and liberation and get to the higher realms, for real. So we can't just rely on an external factor, like going to bathe in the Ganga, getting cremated at the burning ghats. If you're a really bad person, committing a lot of evil in life, yeah, I don't believe that that's possible. I believe that could lead to a better rebirth because there's an intention there. But no, ultimately we have to get to the higher levels of consciousness, unconditional love in particular. So we really got to purify our hearts and our souls and our minds, because ultimately that's what we are here to do. And that comes from behavior, practice, behavior modification, right? So really contemplating and meditating when negativities come up in the mind, right? When stuff negative happens to you, you take that as your karma, and then you sit with it and you'd be like, okay, why did that manifest? Why is that in my movie? Oh, I need to work on some stuff. And if everybody does that, yeah, the world can transform very, very quickly. And it's the Hindus that need to lead the way in that, because we have the numbers. So there's a lot of New Age spiritual people that understand these teachings. There's the Kabbalists as well. So Kabbalah is becoming very popular, and it's very, very practical. And it's very, very, very good teachings. I just did a whole bunch of courses and I learned the Kabbalistic teachings. And it's non-dual in nature. It's basically you and God, and that's it. And anything that comes into your movie is designed for you specifically. It's destiny that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be working on. And then once you overcome these defilements and delusions, then those things, you're going to be tested again and again. And then eventually, success. You're going to be beyond those tests, and then those negativities will no longer manifest. So you can see this amongst the saints and the great yogis of the past. Eventually they're getting to a state of just divine union and oneness with the infinite field, and then just radiating love and light and joy, that there's no negativities coming up for them because they've purified all of that, right? So the real test is within the physical domain, right? So we're spiritual beings manifesting in physical form, but the physical world is still part of the non-physical. So non-dual, it's like existence and non-existence. Here we are, right? So ultimately what exists? What exists is the source of the existence. So same, right? You can't have form without the non-form of the source, right? So the infinite field of consciousness manifesting as all forms. And really getting into that space of contemplation, meditation, sitting in stillness, going within, and feeling that vibration of just pure consciousness. Namaste. And then, yeah. Yeah, Har Har Mahadev. Yeah. Yeah, just make a video, YouTube. YouTube video. Yeah. Yeah, raise the world. Raise the world, project now. Har Har Mahadev. Yeah. Yeah, amazing. So yeah, that's the inner sanctum right behind me with the chants. So absolutely beautiful. amazing. You got to do the work. You got to rejoice for when the negativities come up and when something happens, because it's like, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you, God. Now I know what I need to work on. And for me, I'm still coming out of some deep spiritual work, and I'm still working on myself, but ultimately we got to move into action, right? So you got to be yourself to the best of your ability, and you got to pursue your dream and your vision and your purpose and your passion. And that's what I'm up to now, and I wish you guys all to do the same. But at the same time, really monitor the behavior, right? And how we're treating others, because we have an aura and a vibrational, energetic field. So yeah, even for me, yesterday something came up where started getting stressed out, and then the young man, Udit, that I was with, he pointed out he could feel like a lingering unhappiness within me. So then I have to reflect, and I got to be like, oh, okay, I need to work on that, because yeah, it wasn't part of my healing. I'm trying to find wholeness, self-worth once again, and then happiness just wasn't part of my repertoire. So now I know it's back on the table to work on and to bring back, and I hope you guys can feel throughout my next month here in Varanasi that my happiness level increases as I connect more and more with the local people, the local devotees, and the beautiful people of India and Varanasi. Because it really is my hope and my wish. Nobody wants Hinduism, to evolve back into what it once was, right? So yeah, it was very shocking to me when I studied the teachings of Dr. David R. Hawkins, the calibrated levels of consciousness, where he calibrated India as very low, below integrity, right? And then the Western nations were very high above. So you can see that as, civilized, uncivilized, basically ultimately comes down to, above integrity and below integrity. And there's many Hindus. And I was surprised by that, because the law of karma is within Hinduism. So it's not just Indians. We can't just label Hindu Indians as just Indians, because that's lumping everybody into the same pool. So then we got to understand, and I think that's a cop-out. It seems like a lot of Hindus are just identifying themselves as Indian and then allowing themselves to do whatever they want. But if you're a Hindu, you need to practice the teachings of karma. So if you're lying, if you're cheating, if you're stealing, if you're scamming, the world's going to notice, right? And it's going to start to question, because now there's a whole thing happening, a bunch of videos online talking about, India just being a horribly polluted and dirty place. And then even the Indians are saying that there needs to be a mindset shift, right? So it needs to come from Hindus, right? Because Hindus are the majority, and this is a Hindu nation ultimately. Because when we're talking about that, wonder about the Islamic nations. Like there's like 50 some of those, and as soon as they get hold of a nation, it's very, very difficult. Eventually the other religions leave, or they're wiped out, or they're converted, right? Whereas India, we have multicultural. Everybody's accepted, and that's a big sign of the advancement of Hinduism, that they're all accepting, right? So we got to honor that, and then seek to be that presence of all inclusivity, but at the same time have boundaries in place where we don't let other religions or people take advantage, right? Because that's a big problem too. So when you're talking about the Dharmic wars of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, the epics where the forces of good had to fight against the forces of darkness, yeah, of course we give the forces of darkness enough time to change and to begin to accept the truth, but at some point in time, no, we really need to stand firm. So that's the mentality, the spiritual warfare, and to be prepared, right? Which is why it's incredible, and I'm actually very pro, the Indian army, right? So the Hindus and the Sikhs, fighting for the borders to protect, the nation, right? India. So, and holding in mind, yeah, a prosperous, a clean, a safe, civilized, abundant, where poverty is stricken. Like, these are things that's possible, right? Anything is possible within the infinite field of possibilities, the infinite field of God consciousness, the infinite field of Shiva, Shakti, manifesting as all forms. Once we really realize our unity and our oneness, yeah, we can create a prosperous and beneficial world for all. And it begins in India, where there's the greatest potentiality because the teachings are ultimate spirituality. And once the people evolve to reflect a level of understanding and behavior that's conducive with those teachings, then there's going to be a tipping point eventually where the other religions will rise up as well. So that's what I foresee happening. There's many, many predictions that eventually we're going to head into a golden age within the beginning period of the Kali Yuga. But we got to manifest that. We got to be active participants. So that's what this YouTube channel is all about. Raise the World project now is you're raising yourself. And ultimately, you are raising the whole world. So thank you so much for joining me. I pray for you. I pray for India. I pray for all Hindus out there. I pray for the younger generation. And I pray for the whole world. So I love you guys. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.